and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, this week we're taking a look at the Cockroach Janata Party, which is fast becoming more than just an internet movement. It is becoming something that is working on ground. Political parties are feeling threatened by it, especially the BJP, because at the very first shot, its Instagram followers overshot the BJP, and what a complex that gave to that party. Apart from that, they've started banning the various accounts, but these accounts keep coming up. They've also got a website. The Cockroach Janata Party has a manifesto. It is appealing to the youth. It's also asking you to post videos of issues that you want to raise, whether they are corruption issues, whether they're related to education, unemployment. So from a 5-point manifesto, which earlier talked about, issues relating to governance, for instance, that the Chief Justice of India, once they retire, they should not get any Rajya Sabha posts. 50% of the seats should be reserved for women, as should the cabinet posts, and so on and so forth. Now they widened the net. They're talking about governance, civic issues that appeal to the Gen Z and to the public at large. So is this movement something that the government should be worried about? What are the conspiracy theories floating around? And of course, we all know that the founder, Abhijit Dipke, who's a 30-year-old, he's a graduate from Boston's in public relations from Boston University. But now he says he will come to India and raise these issues on ground. What will happen then? Will the government dare to arrest him? Or what will that do to the movement? That's something I'm going to be discussing today with my panel. I have with me Kaveri Bamzai. She's a former editor and a columnist and an author. Yashovardhan Jha Azad. He is a former IPS officer. He was, in fact, a special director at the IB. Dilip Cherian, public relations. And of course, he's also someone who's very strong on the art of branding. So I will be asking him because he advises a lot of people on the art of political branding. And Ashutosh, founder, editor of satyahindi.com. Ashutosh, you've been doing a lot of shows also on this. In fact, my first show was with you on this. So what is the mood on the ground regarding the Cockroach Janata Party? What are your theories?
See, Priya, first of all, we have to make a distinction between what is the Cockroach Janata Party and the social disruption and the dislocation which we are witnessing today. There's no doubt that there is anger on the ground. The people are very upset. Youngsters are finding on a daily basis the paper leaks here and there, and the government is, instead of fitting these gaps in the system, they are just blaming everybody on the earth except themselves. So there is a genuine anger in the people, but Cockroach Janata Party is basically a reflection of that anger. But will the Cockroach Janata Party will prove to be another Aam Aadmi Party which will come and win elections and will be a new Caesar in Indian politics? I have very, very strong doubts on that. Yes, because why I'm saying so. I'm saying so for the simple reason because Arvind Kejriwal was a different individual made of a different kind of clay. I don't know. I have very little information about Dipke, but yes, he has created a sensation. And in 5 days, if somebody is getting more than 2 crore likes and dislikes or whatever, then it is a phenomenon. But whether he will be in a position to ride that phenomenon and to change, make some change in the system, very strong doubts. In fact, I have maybe 1% and the 2% of hopes. But if the BJP or the government at the center is trying to just ignore this phenomenon, and I'm very clear on my mind that the political leaders in the country are very, very smart, especially somebody like Narendra Modi and Amit Shah. They're very smart politicians, and it's not just a coincidence of history that somebody who has been a chief minister for 3 terms, another chief prime minister for another 3 terms, is not that he lives in a fool's paradise. He knows that there is an anger, there is a resentment, and the people are really unhappy with the government. So he would like to fix that. But will he arrest Abhijit Dipke? No, I don't see that is happening. If that happens, then obviously I'll call the government that they're living in a fool's paradise.
Okay. Dilip, you wrote something very interesting on the Cockroach Janata Party also, the political branding of it. So, what are your first thoughts on this?
My initial thoughts, Kaveri, are that we are, as always, laying very high expectations on something which is spontaneous and clearly unplanned. That's one. I don't take conspiracy theories on this, though I love all conspiracy theories. On this, I don't see conspiracy as being the central factoid on which we should focus. Ashutosh's point is extraordinarily valid, which is that there is a mood of high resentment among the young today. It doesn't have to do with gold prices or oil prices, but it has to do with their real lives. And we are talking about this happening in our neighborhood in a very active way in the last couple of years. So, any government needs to pay attention to the fact that if it is not seriously managed in terms of addressing their issues, if it is managed the other way with arrests or anything violent, or the most convenient way is to try and choke off the supply lines via the social media platforms. Now, if government does that, this will move from platform to platform, because the one thing that the young generation today have is a resentment to choke points. If you do a check, you will find that the resentment against the access to TikTok is almost as high as the objections to CBSE. So, there clearly is a tone deafness which prevents anybody who is in responsible positions to hear what the numbers are saying. It isn't about a small elite group. It isn't about those who speak English. It is about young people between the ages of 20 and 35 who are really the ones who are fronting this kind of a thing.
So ages 20 to 35, that's, the generation, Kaveri, that is really going on the ground in other countries also. So, while Ashutosh is correct, I also share his opinion that maybe this may not move into a political movement, but, they've started early. Elections are 2 years away. This could have this, how do you see this working out?
I think Surjit Bhalla said it very well the other day. He said that BJP is winning the elections but losing the economy. I'd like to paraphrase that and say that they're actually losing society and young people as well. And that's a very dangerous thing. To be absolutely unaccountable in terms of how young people are feeling, I think that fills me not just with anger, but also a certain sadness, because our generation sold young people the dream of meritocracy, that if you have education, you can become mobile, you can cross borders, you can do anything. If you are taking away that one thing that is their biggest strength, if you're diluting institutions that are testing young people, if you're diluting institutions that are supposed to give them justice, if the Chief Justice of India describes you as a cockroach, and just look at simple things, and they're not simple, they're actually very tragic. Look at the collapse of a building in Saket the other day. Who suffered? It was young people. They were in the mess. Look at what happened to that coaching institution where young people were flooded to death. Young people are suffering everywhere. And the Cockroach Janata Party is a symptom, as Ashutosh said. It's a reflection of the anger on the ground. But it may not be the only way that this anger will be manifested. And if the BJP is complacent, if the government is complacent, that it doesn't really matter, at the end of the day something will happen, we'll win elections again, that's all right, but you lose the country, you lose society, you leave a country which will be so resentful, it'll be so angry. And even things like, Priya, just something as simple as telling people don't buy gold or don't travel abroad. How many people in any case in India can afford it? You're also talking about things that are inaccessible to people. How does it make them feel? I mean, I, as someone who's supposedly well off, I cannot manage these things. You're talking to people who are barely subsistence level, and then the only thing that can give them anything, any hope, is education, and you're tarnishing every institution there. So it just leaves me with a terrible sense of hopelessness and thinking, what have we left our children with?
So, this is, it's tapping into the frustration that is there, the frustration that the young are feeling. But will this, have more takers? Will this, and also there is a lot of suspicion. This is what Arvind Kejriwal does. I mean, Deepke is also formerly with the Aam Aadmi Party. He also told us, make videos when you see people doing corrupt, or taking bribes, etc. The modus operandi is very similar, and that movement sparked off. Ashutosh made that point that he's no Arvind Kejriwal. But जब जज्बात आता है, then somehow leaders do come up or not.
You see, there are two aspects to it. One is, of course, if you look at it politically, कि आगे बढ़ेगा कि नहीं, क्या देखा जाए, इसमें वो जज्बा है कि नहीं, वो strength है कि नहीं. But it's the other part, and I wish I had spoken before Kaveri, because she's taken away all my points.
That's why you're smiling.
And, Surjit Bhalla absolutely rightly said that you can win the elections, but you can't win the economy. Because for economy, you need the support of various people. She's talked about institutions. She's talked about meritocracy. The question is, CJP has really tapped into the real, the heart of not only Gen Z, the other people. One of the most important things which CJP, Cockroach Party, has said is that you should post all the things in the civic area, whether it's garbage, whether it's any damn thing, you should post it. That is what democracy is all about. Coming out is everything, your aspirations. So whether it's unemployment, whether it's the law and order, you see the various things which happening. If you see the bashing up of MPs in for example, West Bengal, it comes to you as a shock that, the same police can turn this way and the other way. What are we looking into? How are we going to look ahead? So, and the points which CJP has is really, really evocative. Why should defections be allowed at all? Why should there be 2/3, 40%? Typical of Indian laws, there is a proviso. For every rule, there is an escape. There is nothing which is by common sense. You have to refer to constitution all the time. Look at the simple things they have said. No CJ should become a member of parliament. Isn't that right? Yeah. There should be no defection. Isn't that right? There should be 50% reservation for women. 100% it should be done. In fact, it will humanize the society and lead to better governance. And of course, the other thing which I feel is very, very critical today is that it is asking the government for responsibility, to own up. If it's asking Dharmendra Pradhan to resign, though I don't think anything will be any different if another one comes, because most of the ministers are absolutely incompetent, which they are in most of the governments, but there is nothing which you expect. So now, if this party is saying, project your frustration, make your aspirations very clear, ask for and demand things, then it's right. The second part, politically, I agree. In this country, as Kaveri said already, by elections तो जीत ही रहे हैं. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Corruption हो, नहीं हो, कुछ भी हो, election तो हम जीतते रहेंगे. So it really doesn't matter. So maybe this does not come on the dashboard at all of the voters. What are they raising? Because again, some money will be given for something. Again, today also some grant has been given for something or the other. So if everyone is, voting on because
welfare
of
schemes,
freebies and other schemes, then it's unfortunate for this democracy. And I fully support, in the end, I fully support CJP, what it's doing. This is the kind of parties which should come up in democracies. If they can't come up in India, it's unfortunate.
So well put, I must say. I'm going to take a quick break and come back and keep the conversation going, so stay with us. Welcome back to the Roundtable. We are taking a look at the Cockroach Janata Party and, what is the future apart from tapping into the popular mood on the ground and the frustration. Ashutosh, you were saying that maybe it won't become a political movement, or what if politicians lend themselves to it? We already have Akhilesh Yadav, Mahua Moitra lending support. If opposition, especially MPs, start promoting them or get absorbed in that movement, will that help?
See, Priya, I think the moot point, I think, which we are missing is that the people already have a very little hope or expectation from the politician. The political establishment is not something which is appreciated or praised by any generation in this country. People have very little hope from them. They have absolutely no respect for the politician in the country, except because they are so powerful, so people like to be a little bit wary of them. But what is the trigger point? The trigger point is the Chief Justice of India calling the unemployed youth as cockroaches.
Right.
That is the trigger point. And that shows that the new generation and a middle class is started having a very serious doubts about the institutional democratic framework of the country. Because Supreme Court and the Chief Justice of India is supposed to be the guardian of the Constitution. He's supposed to be the guardian of the democracy. If the parliament does something wrong, if the executive does something wrong, then it is incumbent on the Chief Justice of India and judiciary and the Supreme Court to come to the rescue of the citizens. But if the Chief Justice of India, judiciary, and the Supreme Court also decides to dispense with the unemployed youth, with the civil society, then where the people will go? So basically, this is the frustration. So in the last 12, 14 years, if you look at the picture, the sad story is, and a story which is normally not being said in as many words, that every institution in the country which had some respect in the past, every institution in the country which had some moral fiber in their body, is losing their ground, losing their strength to stand on their feet. That's the fundamental problem. And if that happens, that means there is death of democracy in the country. There's a death of constitutionalism in the country. And I think this whole anger comes from this trigger point, that people are losing hope, not from the political establishment, but from the institutional framework, from the constitutional framework, and losing hope from the last post in the democracy, that is judiciary. I think that is what has to be understood.
Has that message, Dilip, the fact that institutions are really under attack, that message has come out clear?
I think that is the modus operandi of this young cohort that we're talking about. They're not into, because most of them have observed the methods by which politicians win votes and win seats. So they're quite clear that there's no hope in that lot. Now, with the CJI having made this huge mistake, but it is a mistake which is springing out of a sense of arrogance, entitlement, and ignorance. All these three. Now, when you have people of that quality and caliber placed in certain positions, wherever it may be, it doesn't matter if it's one position or the other, meaning the anger against the election commission will be something which will come out in a different format. So let's not try and bucket these people into a political movement. That would be incorrect. If the CJP were to throw its weight behind a particular candidate after, for example, observing the civic unrest in a particular region, then that candidate who they support will actually have an advantage of young people wanting to vote for them. So it may cut across, they may push for one candidate in one place and a different party candidate in a different place. Now, I think that the burden of expectation on them needs to be how good are they at triggering change. Whether that means an overthrow of the current system, the constitution, etc., that's, I think, too early to start putting values to it. In fact, movements like this often get buried in the analysis. But given that globally, even the Economist magazine has chosen to pay attention to this, and I've seen the New York Times, I've seen the Financial Times, everybody is spotting a global trend. That is the thing to watch for. And the worst thing to do is try and suffocate it. And as the name itself suggests, this is a party with a symbol which can survive a nuclear holocaust.
Can it survive the BJP is the big question. But Kaveri, should the government be concerned and be, or rather, do you think it is worried? Because, we were on a show, I think Yasho and I were more than one or two panelists. The show was to discuss Gymkhana Club. But two at least of the four panelists came up with this theory that the whole Gymkhana Club controversy is there to distract the headlines from the Cockroach Janata Party. So is the government worried, do you think? And be the point that Dilip made about, there will be youth and young people are looking for alternatives to politicians, that all, as everybody is saying. So we saw Vijay, we saw Anna Malai now saying, I will form my own party. Will that happen more and more?
Yeah, I think the point here is that it doesn't really matter whether that's the CJP or any other party. I think there will come a time when there will be some party or some organization which will channel these frustrations and aspirations. So it doesn't really matter who it will be, but it will be. That is the cycle of all democracies. But I think the sad thing is that can it happen in an environment where even the social media has been weaponized, where even borders have been weaponized? Young people had the choice earlier. If they had education, they could be mobile, they could cross borders, they could go abroad, work abroad. The whole world has now become so protectionist. They've weaponized institutions. So where do young people go? The point is, can you have a sustained movement in an environment that we have currently in India? And I think that is something that we have to think really hard about. Instead of thinking about why the CJP has come about, I think that is obvious because there is so much anger and frustration. The point is, can it be sustained? And I think that is where we have to really do some deep introspection and see how difficult it is to sustain any movement without the kind of muscle power, without the kind of money power, without the kind of institutional backing that the current government has. How difficult is it? I mean, we've seen Vijay, Annamalai has now been toiling along for so many years in Tamil Nadu with the BJP, of course. But, those are not necessarily things that can translate into a national movement. So we have to look at how sustainable this movement can be in this current environment of this totally uncivil society and undemocratic institutions. It's going to be very tough. And I think that is what we have to think about. We have to think about what has happened to our institutions, which enabled such parties and such organizations to flourish.
So the discontent that is there everywhere is also there in India. But is the BJP worried, Yasho? Do you see them being worried at all?
Of course.
Concerned?
Of course. BJP is certainly worried. BJP won't be worried only because there are 2 crore followers or something, because that doesn't really translate into anything. But BJP is worried about any development of any kind. If there is something which is, for example, the attack is against the education minister. So that means it draws the attention of the people and focuses again on needs, sewage, all kinds of things. The second point which I want to make, Priya, is that, nothing is really impossible. During the time of Mrs. Gandhi, I mean, what a popular leader. She was in complete command and one of the finest PMs also, I think. But Jayaprakash Narayan movement came about, and the way it came about was amazing. It had the support of the young only. These politicians who came up later, whether it was Nitish and all those, they were all in their young age. So it was a kind of a Gen Z which powered it through. So this can, of course, come. Now the question is, as Dilip made a good point, that will this be able to trigger a change? Now, trigger a change could be in any form. It could be a kind of a mobilization, say in Janpat. It could be a mass mobilization, say somewhere in Bangalore, because, parties are coming up, all over. So that could be. The third thing is, if there is more and more outpouring in a democratic system of people pointing at unemployment, pointing at other things, and issues are being raised again and again, the government will have to react. And in this reaction and action, if something happens, it boils over, then yes, it triggers some kind of a change. So in the end, I would say that, in Bihar, we call cockroaches tel chatta. Tel chatta is something which survives anything. It can survive nuclear war also. So I have a feeling if it survives, because the case is pretty strong and the ideology is excellent, which fits in a year. So as I said earlier, let me end on that tone, that it's sad if an organization like this doesn't come about and induce some fresh changes, because as Ashutosh said, we are sick of the politicians, and let, open new doors to democracy. I welcome it.
I think that's a very good note to end on, because the issues that they are raising are indeed issues on the ground that all of us are facing, not just the Gen Z, but even everybody in their everyday life. Actually, these are issues of governance, civic issues that need to be addressed, and we are glad there is a voice that is raising them. Let's see what happens, and hopefully they will survive. But on that note, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.